we've talked a lot about crews. We've talked a lot about foremen. Something that I'm curious to know is like, how do you qualify a good superintendent? Do you typically try to raise in-house as well, foreman to a super, or is it good to get somebody that maybe not everybody knows that can come in as maybe a new authority figure?
But we try to, keep it in-house, especially for a superintendent, try to move people up. And, we try to create a good work environment where our guys enjoy working there. That's the main thing. When you get a good employee, you don't want them to leave. And, where I work now, most of the guys have been there for 10 plus years. Because they enjoy it. We try to treat them good. We try to give them incentives. And, we do annual evaluations of our employees, and we try to bump them up, in pay scale, based on their evaluation. If they do good, we try to reward them. Because we don't want somebody else to come in and hire them out from under us. Superintendents, they have a pretty big role. Me as a project manager, I get to work, I distribute it out to my superintendents, and then, they have to manage the projects. They got foremans under them. I try to keep, a good rule of thumb is usually 5 to 6 crews under one superintendent, because you don't want to overload them as well. But, a superintendent's got a pretty important role, because they've got all these crews that's working under them, which works under the project manager. And if you got multiple superintendents, that's multiplied. You may have, as a project manager, you may have 15, 20 crews working under one project manager, depending on how many superintendents you have. But he's got to make sure that all these crews have a job to go to. And he's got to make sure they got the materials they need to do that job. He's got to make sure they got the equipment they need to do that job. And also, I give him a time limit for every job. He's got to make sure that these crews know that they got a certain amount of time, that when they mobilize, you got X number of days to get this job done and get out. And if they get done, hopefully there's a reward to end. That if they can finish under budget, try to reward them. Let them know they've done a good job, and they'll remember that when we go to the next job. Hey, we're gonna bust our ass, get this job done, get us a little change in our pocket, and go on to the next one. But superintendent is a pretty big role. It takes a big role off the project manager. If you have a project manager that's trying to bid work, pick up work, and try to manage multiple jobs without a superintendent, it's pretty easy to overload your project manager. And nowadays, a lot of project managers that these people are hiring, these other companies and stuff, don't really have a lot of field experience. They got the knowledge, to bid the work and an idea of what it costs to do the work, but they haven't really been out and self-performed the work. Well, your superintendent, most time it's a foreman that's been moved up, so he's been there, he's done that. So he knows how to get a job in. And if he doesn't, you shouldn't move him up as a superintendent. But yeah, we try to move up in house. And when you got people that's been there for 5+ years, you can pretty much tell if they're qualified or not, to take on that superintendent role.
I know one thing you mentioned in the past that is pretty important to an individual project is obviously making sure you have the right materials ordered and accounted for in your bids, but also you mentioned the placement of that equipment or materials on site. Whether it's machinery you're going to be running, or whether it's parts that you need for the project. Now, in the past, you mentioned that you wanted to make sure that those were in the right place, but is that something you typically leave to the super?
Yeah, and the main thing is, especially when you're sharing a project with other GCs or other subcontractors, you've got multiple contractors in there working for multiple trades. You don't want to put material that's going to be in your way, first and foremost, but you also don't want to put it in the way of someone else. Because what's going to happen is you get your material put in there, then all of a sudden, this contractor here is like, I got something going in over here and your material's right in my way. So now you got to stop what you're doing. You got to spend the company's time and money on equipment and labor that you could be getting production. Now you got to move this material, which you got to find somewhere else to put it, and hope it's not in someone else's way. So now you got to move all this material again. All right, you got it stockpiled. You good. You work 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden it's in somebody else's way. Here you are moving again. I mean, you can literally waste thousands of dollars by moving material multiple times because you didn't do a good job finding you a laydown yard to where your material's going to be out of the way. And sometimes there's not enough room. You know, like a lot of jobs we do, like in downtown Nashville, they're really confined. I mean, you're working in basically like a block or half a block in a city block. So that building that you're working on may essentially take up 95% of that block. So sometimes you got to figure in your price as an estimator to store your materials off site and be able to truck them in as you need them. So you know there's certain instances where you're not going to have a laydown yard to even put materials. You're going to have to just bring them in as needed. And there again, your superintendent has a major role of making sure he gets those materials that you need to finish a day or 2 days worth of work moved in on a regular basis. And you know, there's no great production on a tight job like that. You know, it's like sometimes it's minimum materials to get a day's worth of work because you just can't get the production you'd like to get.
Do you do any types of qualification for your subcontractors that you hire, where you have like I don't want to say it's like a rating list, but maybe just like a checklist to see if, you know, in the past when we've worked with, you know, a particular subcontractor, you know, are they clean? Are they timely? Are they professional? Are they showing up with the appropriate amount of people each day? Are they causing problems? Like, do you keep tabs on the subcontractors you use, or is it just more just experience and you just retain that knowledge over time?
Well, no, you still have to keep tabs on your subcontractors because every project has a deadline.
I mean when you're, let's say you've worked with a particular subcontractor twice, 2-3 times in the past. And on this next project, maybe you look at it and you say, well, this subcontractor is not going to be good for this job because I know in the past I've had issues with them with, you know, whatever it may be.
Yes.
And we can use the example of maybe they don't take into consideration where they need to store their equipment. When they lost a lot of job, they set back our time on that. Do you keep that type of information anywhere?
Yes.
You keep like notes?
Yeah, I do keep notes, and but generally, you know, it's a good mental note. I mean, it's like when you hire a sub and they come in and they don't perform like you hope they would, you know, generally when it comes around, because the way jobs are right now, the way they progress, and as many jobs as they are coming up on just a weekly basis, you know, it's fresh on your mind. You're like, hey, this sub, you know, he didn't really perform like he should, and so I'm not even going to consider him on this job. And there's certain subs, you know, that work better in rural areas, and there's certain subs that work better in confined areas. And, you know, as you have to use subcontractors, you learn pretty quick, you know, which ones are going to be best suited for the situation you're in. You know, the one that gets the work done the best on a confined space, he may not do as good in an open range as like, you know, another sub would do, and vice versa. So, you know, you kind of get to know, if you use a regular subs, you know, I say, you know, we don't use a whole lot of subs, but maybe 2 or 3 times a year when we do use them, you know, you get to know which ones you can trust and which ones you need, and which ones are best suited for that project.
You ever sub out crews that are under you to other companies? Or you guys stay busy enough trying to find work?
Well, we generally work as a sub for the most part. We're a GC, but we generally work as a subcontractor. So, yeah, I mean, most all of our work is sub. You know, there are, you know, some projects that we will be like the GC on, but they're few and far between. You know, most of the time it's us working for a bigger GC as a subcontractor.